Welcome back to the Pool Pro Podcast. By having a team of builders in your area that rely on you, you can be a part of the pre-startup process. Learn how JC Escudero teams with service pros to ensure a successful startup. Listen up. Welcome back to the Pool Pro Podcast. This is Michelle Cavanaugh with my co-host,
Dave Rockwell.
Hey, Dave. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome back. Thanks everyone for listening. We've been getting some really good comments and feedback, questions on our YouTube channel that we've been answering. So thank you so much for being a listener. You can subscribe on this YouTube channel that you're watching, or if you're listening on the audio only, either via iTunes or Spotify or some other podcast platform, feel free to subscribe. And then when the new episode comes up every Wednesday morning, you will get notified. Excited today. This is a topic that Dave has really been wanting to talk about. This is a series we're going to be doing in regards to startups. We have JC Escudero today, who is the owner of J Design Pool and Spa. He's the builder extraordinaire in the Orange County area, I believe, JC. Is that right?
I'm in LA, Metro.
Oh, LA. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So we're excited to talk to him because we're going to talk about pre-startups today and how you prepare for the startup. Thanks to JC for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Dave, what are we concerned about with pre-startups? I know this is a topic that is close to your heart in regards to making sure service guys know what's up.
Yeah, and as a service guy, I really appreciate working with builders who give some more thought to getting the pool off the ground the right way. So many times in my career, I get a phone call and the builder just says, well, the pool's full, get over here when you can. And you get there and the pool's full of dust, the water's cloudy, the equipment hasn't been started. And I think really we need to work closer together, builders and service people, whether the builder does it himself or whenever he turns it over to a service person. It needs to be better coordinated. And JC, I know, feels very strongly about that, but getting the pool off to a good start is critical to what's going to happen the rest of the life of the pool. So what we really wanted to talk about with JC today, he had some great ideas of what needs to be done and coordinated between the builder and the service tech leading up to Plaster Day. How do we get a pool ready to start up? It's gone through sometimes years of construction process, at least months. The homeowner's chomping at the bit to get in, get all these people off his property so he can have it back to himself. And this is step one of the process that gets him where he wants to be.
What do you think, JC?
Exactly. And as Dave mentioned it's also what the Plaster crew is expecting as well, because believe it or not, I think it's a three-way. Not only the builder, you're making sure his construction skills and he's determined to deliver a shell that it's probably, perfectly prepped for the Plaster crew to really work and do an excellent job. And at the same time, the service technician, service company, or whoever is taking care of that pool has the tools and knows exactly how all that transition works. If the builder is not there, or the Plaster crew, they're just hired to go and do that. Very few companies have an in-house Plaster crew because it's just tremendous load of work, unless it's a plastering company that does just that. But in general speaking, it's really only the transition between those, and that's the real, in a nutshell, those three moving parts that I need to work together, right, Dave?
Yes. So how far in advance of actual Plaster Day do we start to prepare for the startup? And well, let's start with that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. In my opinion, it really starts, if it is a new construction, from the excavation. And I say those things because a lot of the times, either the service technician or the Plaster crew do not know where the problem is, or how did we got here into this problem, if they don't understand where that issue came from. And a lot of the times the excavation was not supervised properly, and they may have, not enough room for the steel to go properly, or the elevation is off, and you're going to have problems, servicing that pool, because the plumber will have to put the skimmer or lines to low, to high, and all those little details start to add up. And now that you mentioned some of the prepping things, like we talked about, are very important to deliver the shell, that it's clean, that it's free of debris, that you properly chipped out some penetrations where the plumbing comes, and also have it, sealed properly. A lot of the times, I'm sure you get this very often, hopefully not, with some plaster companies, they get called back because they say, oh, there's a rust spot, there's something wrong with the plaster mix, this and that. And ultimately, it's not the plaster issue. It was not, the shell was not prepped properly. It was probably a rebar, it was too shallow on the concrete, or a tie wire, as simple as that, that was not removed, or it was on a shallow part next to a fitting, and it starts bleeding out as the contact with water. And those are problems that you can avoid just by having a little bit of more thoroughness, a little tally list that you can do with your with your builder, and while you're doing a walkthrough, making sure that everything is clean, so the plaster crew doesn't have a big problem. And I talk to my crews also all the time, making sure I'm delivering what they need. Nobody wants to get into a pool that they show up in the morning, they want to work, and they're hired to do a beautiful plaster job, and they got to stay there for 4 hours cleaning a pool.
Yeah.
And so guess what? Their quality work is not going to be what you expected, because they're tired. They were 4 hours cleaning a pool and draining it, and having to battle and fight against the current with all those issues becomes a big issue for the homeowner at the end of the day, because he will not have the product he's supposed to get, or he was expected to get.
Sure. And so there's some things that, as a pool service tech, has a reasonable right to expect from the pool builder. And I think you hit on one. I've found rust stains on pools show up really soon. I think one of the first responsibilities that a pool builder has is to walk the pool excavation pre-shotcrete and look for those loose tie wires. Make sure they're not bent over. Check your steel placement. Make sure it's not going to end up too close to the surface, because these are huge fixes down the road. San Diego has a lot of problems with this, and a whole burgeoning industry of underwater pool repair was born there, because there was just so much need for somebody who could get in there and cut that out without draining the pool. And I know a guy who's made quite a career out of that, but it all boils down to a pool that wasn't built right. So fast
Is the service
forward,
guy though? Is the service guy going? He's not going with the builder and doing these kind of walkthroughs ahead of time. You're talking about the
no,
builder
this
and the
is
plaster.
something the builder's going to do.
Yeah.
Then after that, especially on some of the really big and more complex projects, I really appreciate when the builder invites me in several times during the construction process, so I can see where the plumbing lies in the trenches, and how everything is laid out, what it looks like underneath all the hardscape once that's finished. Then I have a better mental picture. If something goes wrong, if I know where the light conduits are, if it's hard to pull a cord, I'll know why. There's extra bends and extra 90s in the conduit, and I have to prepare mentally for that when I have to go repair something. But it's on the complex projects, it's really nice to get the service guy involved as soon as possible.
Yeah. And we talked about that. The other episode we did with JC was about building a relationship with your builder, the relationship between the service guy and the builder. And if you don't have a relationship with a builder in your area that is recommending you to do the service to the homeowner, then you really need to start building those relationships and becoming the service guy in the area for the builder to recommend.
Exactly. And, ultimately, that's how we all get referrals. And we all get, continuity on work, and it builds up that relationship, like you say. And we have discussed this with Dave and other builders and service technicians that I know in the industry. For them, it's very critical, just like for Dave, having that relationship and being able to call them up and say, I have a problem. What should I do? Or where is this coming from? So as Dave said, coming along is really great, even at early stages, and creating that real good professional relationship that the client benefits.
Yeah.
And that also introduces the homeowner and the general contractor, if there is one, to this is the guy who's going to service this pool. He knows everything about it. He's seen it go in, and he's your guy. And it really makes for the start of a really good long-term relationship with the customer. So now let's fast forward to, we're getting really close to Plaster Day. You sent me a really nice list of things that we need to consider. So let's start going over those. What are the things that we need to start doing, you and I, if we're going to start up a pool together?
Right. Well, first of all, I would say that, making sure the installation of lights in their light niches, and the light niches are properly plumbed or straight with a pool wall, is so critical. Just like the plumbing pipes, that, if they're not crooked, might as well fix it before. Because once you have water and you have a light that is crooked, the illumination is going to be terrible. It's like having a bulb in your kitchen that it's, facing the street, and you can't see anything inside your kitchen.
Right.
And sorry to use that type of scenarios, but you see
That makes
pools that, where is your pool light? I can't see any light in the water. And either the light is too deep and you see the floor, and you see all the imperfections, unfortunately, that troweling comes with it. And a lot of people do not understand that pools are man-made. We use machinery, but they're man-made. Tradesmen, from the steel to the concrete, to the troweling, to the tile, everything is done by hand. There is no manufacturing process on construction of the concrete vessels or in-ground pools, as we call them. So having those things done right, and sealed and clean the concrete from debris, making sure your tile is clean and your grout is clean. I kid you not, I've cleaned tile once the pool is full, and you have to, sit, upside down in the floor with half of your head in the water trying to clean that tile. Why didn't you do it when the pool was empty? It's just as simple as that. And those scenarios are very critical. Shop vacs, water, power washing the shell. It's actually a good business practice, because you're going to have a concrete that is pretty moist, that is going to receive very well the new material, whether it's a plaster finish, whether it's a regular plaster or an aggregate finish. So those are critical points that I kind of like to walk through. And also one of the things that are kind of important that we can touch base, it's about the equipment. And you have also that is critical, as Dave was saying. Go around, see where things are, and why we have the equipment this, and why is that valve like that, and figure out what the pool needs to do, or how the plumbing is going to react once he takes over and starts that pool circulating. And a lot of these pools have a lot of water features. People want them. So you got to be fluent on what's happening. Uh,
Yeah.
I've also seen many times on startups, not only the client, but service technicians that don't know what that is. They never
Yeah.
seen one. And it's very important we explain and we talk with them and have that relationship, like we said at the beginning, so they understand what piece of equipment it's doing and why and how it needs to operate. I often get called back sometimes to go look at a problem on equipment or a warranty call, and I see my timers all screwed up. I go like, why is that? Why is your pool not circulating like we agreed, like I told you, like we did at the beginning? And I don't control sometimes who the homeowner hires, and that's entirely up to their decision. You know, it's a lot of the times it's just an economic decision for them. So, you know, you get what you pay. Unfortunately, we say it in the industry too often. And that is the true fact.
So what I'd like to do is go back. You touched on a lot of things in a short period of time, and I'd like to unpack a few of them.
Sure.
One of the things that you mentioned, I think, is really important is on the lighting. Niche pool lights, the newer LED ones, are very critical about their orientation. Pantera just sent out a directive reminding installers that the screw has to be exactly at 12 o'clock in order for their lights to shine properly, because of the ribs in the lens. If
Exactly.
they're crooked, the light won't illuminate the pool properly. Now that can be fixed by rotating the lens, loosening it up and rotating it, but that's something that would be really nice to have all dialed in before there's water in the pool and before we're walking around on brand new plaster. So checking that is, I think, is a really important pre-plaster step. One thing that you talked about that I wanted to get you to explain a little bit more is about preparing the surface to receive the plaster. There's a term you hear, SSD, among plasterers, and tell me a little bit about what that means.
Exactly. Surface saturation. And that's exactly that term that you mentioned. Once you have a shell that it's nice and clean, the concrete, it's basically are going to absorb a lot of the moisture the receiving material is going to bring. So if you have a shell that it's been laying around for months because of construction or hardscape or any other construction timeline that was required, these shells are sitting on the sun and they dry up over time. Like they get really hot. It's concrete, just like on the street, or you walk and you go to a in the summer, you can't walk on it, or even
Yeah. The
on
sidewalk. Yeah.
on your sidewalk. So imagine inside that shell, you're trying to apply a nice material that requires certain time to actually dry. It's going to dry too fast. It's going to create problems right away before he even has water on the pool. So creating that shell being really wet and moisture will not absorb that much of that material that the water the material has, or plaster, and it will allow it to properly cure or set before you actually add water or during the time the water is filling up the pool.
So the SSD actually, as I understand it, means saturated but surface dry, so that the moisture is in the gunite, in the shotcrete shell, but the surface moisture has evaporated, so the concrete is moist, but it's not dripping wet, basically.
Right.
Now, a lot of pool builders, and again, there's a whole burgeoning industry of leak detection and leak repairs in pools that has thrived because of problems with the way pools are built. A lot of pool builders now are adamant that pools should be completely waterproofed with a membrane waterproofing. But when you do that, you can't get that SSD and the moisture in the plaster cannot absorb. So how do you feel about waterproofing pools, and
Right.
what are you seeing with that?
I'm gonna split your question in two parts. And the first part, I will say, definitely, that preparation of the surface is really important for that receiving material, like we talked. Now, when you start putting a waterproof membrane, you have to also understand what is going to be your finished material. Some manufacturers are not okay with you installing a waterproof or their material on top of a waterproof membrane that they don't know about or how well it's going to bond. We are using cements. So these two cements, which is your shell and the plaster finish, whether it's an aggregate or not, they require a lot of rough area, and there's grades to that to allow that to happen. A lot of these manufacturers are coming with issues because some of these waterproofs are not applied properly. That's the other part that I was going to say about the construction. Uh, it can be your solution for a leak detector having a waterproof membrane. And honestly, most of the pools leak at the penetrations. We put, and I get this call so often, too. It's happened to everyone, especially in construction. So right away, when I get a call like that, I'm going to pressure test my equipment. Right away, I see that there is no issue on the plumbing, so the pool shouldn't be leaking. Well, guess what? A lot of the times, if you didn't prep properly your light conduits and they were not pressure tested, you're going to have a leak there, right there. Or your same light niche, if you're using, a traditional uh, plastic light niche, a lot of the times those fittings behind get loose or they move due to the shotcrete application, because they get this concrete at high velocity hitting these light niches. Not only, like you said and you pointed it out, they move and they create an off-level situation for your light to be installed, but they also create these problems. And the second part of the leak detector makes his job real easy. If you already have all these things in place, you know exactly where your problems are. Now, inspecting your shell and cleaning it will also let you know if you have a little issue here and you have either maybe a small crack that may not look like just a hairline crack or a normal, uh, uh, concrete crack, and you may have an issue there. You may have a lot of rebound, and the pool builder is so important. He does that walkthrough to understand why is this problems coming from, so
Yeah.
he can relate that to the plaster crew and the plaster plumbing. A lot of the times, you can see this over time. After observing many years being on site on job sites, you start picking up on little tips. And one day I had, my early days of construction and supervising, I saw a plaster guy just going with a hammer all over the pool. I go like, what are you doing? I mean, it's concrete, it's not going, you're not going to break it. I made a joke out of it, but I didn't know exactly what he was doing. I was green and inexperienced, but he explained to me, I can hear if there's a little hollow spot. And I'd rather remove that now than have a problem with my plaster once the water is in, because plaster may just pop out because there was an issue with the substrate. Very often not overseen, and it's one of the items that are also caused of many go backs and issues with builders.
And so this is something that I think is highly critical, and it's why it's a good idea for the pool service person and the pool builder to get together before the plaster is installed in the pool. Because if you just show up as a pool service tech to start the pool up after it's full of water, the plaster's already installed. Pools that have a membrane waterproofing are prone to kind of a ghosting, white cloudiness comes through sometimes. There's check cracking can happen. And it's all, a lot of it has to do with the moisture not having a place to go behind and be absorbed. And so but once it's installed, the go-to for most plaster companies and some pool builders that don't have a good relationship with their service tech is, well, it's the service guy's fault. They show up with a can of
Yeah.
test strips or a cheap test kit and go, it's all about your water chemistry. It's your fault. And so it's really important for the pool person to have a defensible position that he knows how the plaster went in, what's under the plaster, and he really needs to understand all of the issues involved with the things that led up to where his water chemistry came into play.
So true.
I agree completely.
So now the plaster's in the pool, or the water's going into the pool. Let's move to the equipment pad and let's talk about the things that are needed. The startups at the equipment pad, as you pointed out earlier, with the average backyard pool is no longer just an average backyard pool. There's so many other things going on now. Water features are added. Complex water treatment systems are becoming more and more popular. As you know, I'm a big advocate of those. And all of these things require a little extra work at the equipment pad when it comes time.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that, you know, is crucial on all this prepping part when you get to the equipment is, well, you had everything pressure tested. You ensure that you had no issues there. So once you're doing all these walkthroughs, empty your plumbing, let all the water out, let it go in the pool, clean it, power wash it, get all that bad water that it's been sitting and stagnating in those pipes for a long time. Very important to take it out. And at the same time, you're gonna do the plaster a huge favor. A lot of the times the elevation on the pipes, there's always a little bit of water that may stay inside and it may drip while they're plastering. That causes a huge problem because it's literally staining or hydrating your material before it should be, or before it's completely ready to receive the water and to be filled up. And that's one of the things that is really important at the equipment pad. The second thing that I always try to do and recommend is to go over a little bit of the functionment. And we all understand basically how the pool and spa works and what some water features will do. So if you do that walkthrough with the service technician, the day they come in for the startup, they're not going to be calling you, you know, at 6 p.m. Hey, the pool is full. Please answer your phone because I have a question. Because you know, it's like, where's that valve? What is this valve doing that? I close it, but it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And it's intricate in the plumbing part, and it's 100% accurate on that. So closing the valves, make sure your spas and your bypasses and everything is open or closed on the position it's supposed to receive the pool as the pool is being filled, so you don't have any issues and you don't have any water seepage going from one place to another that it's unwanted at that point, because it may claim some streaks in your finished looks and materials. I'm sure that happened to you, Dave.
Oh yeah, yeah. One thing that you brought out that I think is really a great idea. Some of these pools are part of a much larger construction project on the property.
Yeah.
And these pipes have been under pressure and capped off sometimes for years, sometimes 2 or 3 years.
Correct.
And you cut that pipe and it's just sulfur, rotten egg smell. That's biofilm. That is a bacterial colony that chlorine just doesn't just kill it.
Exactly.
It's very difficult to get rid of once it's established. And I love your idea about pressure testing light conduits, because that is most neglected, least thought of thing and a number one source of leaks in a pool. But when you open those lines up, I like the idea of flushing them out before you fill the pool, before you plaster. At least get that started. I always run enzymes in the water when I do my startups on pools that have been under pressure for a long time, and you get that rotten egg smell. But I like the idea of getting it out of, at least rinsing the pipes out, getting the worst of it out, and then the enzymes can do their thing. And the pool has an ozone system that'll help a lot too, so that the chlorine can get to the actual pathogens and kill them.
Exactly. And those are some things that even builders, us, we don't know. You pointed it out. When you add the enzymes that kill this extra additional biofilm that is inside the pipe as a residue. Mm-hmm. We don't have magic, broom that can go inside the pipe and brush it off real nice, like you can do on a sink cleaning a cup or anything, like that. So that is a great point on doing that and testing the water as well before you fill up, so you know what you need to do to balance that pool water as it fills. And I know you got a few tricks under your sleeve to do that.
Right, and so then as far as the actual startup procedures of the pool, there's different philosophies. There's guys that do an acid startup. There's guys that do a barrel. I like the barrel and adding calcium to the water and adjusting the pH as it fills, so that you just the plaster gets the gentlest start possible.
Right.
And neither scaling or aggressive water touches it. Let the plaster kind of do its thing.
Yeah.
And then, if there are streaks and things that you have to sort out after the 30 days after it's cured and the surface is good and hard, then if you want to do a little bit of an acidic treatment, or, there are some things you can do to try and even out the streaks. But
Right.
The best thing to do is give it the gentlest start possible and let the concrete cure and get strong before you get too aggressive with it.
And I always tell, even my clients, I make it easy for me. Why make it hard for me? When I explain to them, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, it's because I want to avoid any aggravation that you're going to have. Like you said earlier, some of these clients are waiting for years to get their pool completed because it's a much broader, project in construction. And that said, even if it is just a few months in construction, you want to get your yard back, like you said, and the homeowner needs to understand what is going to be going on. If he's not kept informed, he will have a lot more questions and he will not understand what are you actually doing. So educating your client at the same time, not only introducing your service technician or the person who's going to do the startup with the client, so we all understand how the water needs to work and what are the things that we need to do and why he can't swim right away.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I had a customer a number of years ago that they were so anxious to get in the pool. It was a black plaster pool.
Oh, wow.
They got in, husband, wife, kids, and the dog.
Oh, gosh.
As the pool was filling, by the time it got about waist deep, got in, walked all over the plaster.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, I hope you like footprints because
that's what you got now.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, just to go back to the mentorship side, I'm a big believer in mentorship. And I feel like if there are builders or service guys out there, that don't have a relationship built with a builder in your area or a couple of builders in your area, invite them out to lunch, invite the owner or the, out to lunch. Because I feel like with me, whenever I decide I need a mentor in a particular area in business, most people are willing to mentor you, if you put the effort forth. So, you could invite JC as an example out to lunch, just talk about it. You could ask if you could come visit a job site or two to understand it better. I think the key here is educating yourself, because you'll be a better service guy. And then maybe this builder will start recommending you because you showed the drive to want to learn more and understand more. And then if you walk the job site with them, you can understand somehow some of these systems work better. Even automation or things, Dave, things we've talked about. JC, you mentioned the timer not being right and different things. I think a lot of times they just feel embarrassed to ask questions, because I don't know if you've seen some of the Facebook groups, but if you ask a stupid question, you get destroyed on Facebook. So I think, they're probably like, I'm not going to ask a dumb question or admit that I don't know how to run that system, because they're embarrassed. But if you meet a mentor like JC or somebody else who's willing to educate you and show you, then that's only going to make you better at your job. And again, maybe you'll get some referrals out of it. So don't be afraid to ask, somebody out to lunch or for a phone call or a Zoom meeting. And, Dave Rockwell is so fabulous with that on the service side. If you have a question, you call him up. He'll certainly talk to you and explain things to you and make you feel like you have a better understanding. So don't be afraid to do that. That's the whole point of this podcast and others, is to educate.
Yes. And on the side of the builder, on the builder side as well, we shouldn't be afraid of that. We need to reach out to the technicians. I got a story for you guys too. I made a leak detector, really young guy. He had a lot of drive. He wanted to learn. He wanted to get better. He was going to get married. He says, I'm going to start my own business. And a good entrepreneurial spirit. And I looked at him, one time I met him at literally a distributorship for picking up materials and equipment. And he was there, and I go like, what do you do? And he struck me his enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I go like, give me your number. And I met with him. I took him to a couple shotguns. I explained to him what I do, how I do it, and what I'm expecting from a leak detector. And he's been my leak detector on call since then. He knows he needs only to check two places, the skimmer and the lights. And now, after years of ourselves learning more as builders, and now that I pressure my conduits as well, before I didn't do it, nobody did it at the beginning. These are things you pick up and learn. Like you said, mentorship and education programs, so on and so forth, are very important. And after that relationship that I built with him, he stepped up his game. Now he has a California construction license. He's also a swimming pool builder. He remodels pools. And he started all just by wanting to do it, but wanting to do it right.
Yeah.
And learning it properly. So, it's a huge shout out to a lot of guys there. Please, do that. It's very important that you get the point across and understand on both sides of the fence as a builder as well.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing that I would say to the service technicians is especially now during COVID, there's a lot of really good online training available. Pantera just released a whole new Pantera University series on all their equipment. They have classes that they would have taught.
Is that on YouTube, Dave? I tried to find that. Is it on YouTube? Where is that? Because I tried to find it.
It's on their website. You have to be a Pantera partner.
Oh, I see.
You have to be registered with them, which is a good thing to do with whatever manufacturer you deal with. I know JC is a big Hayward guy, and Hayward has similar programs now where you can get online training. But as a service technician, if you walk onto a pool and don't understand how to program the system, how to turn things on and off, and on a big automation system, then chances are you're really not qualified to service this particular pool. So one of the first things you need to do is really understand all the equipment on that pool and how it works. We're to do the initial troubleshooting if something goes wrong. Even if you're going to get warranty involved, it's nice to give them as much of a heads up and a head start as possible so they can come out with the right parts and fix it in one call. But that's a really important place to start, is really understanding how the equipment on that pool works.
Yeah. And if you want to top it off, the last person or the last moving part that you should be involved and you should have some relationship, like you say, on the equipment part, it's with your technical department from the equipment or manufacturer of your choice.
Yeah.
If you have a good relationship with them, they'll answer the phone, they'll help you with questions, they'll send a technician out, to help you out and show you how to install this or install that. Besides those classes, so it is really really nice to get that relationship, because then also the service technician knows who the equipment technician is,
Yeah.
and he can ask, why is this light acting up? Why is this pump not doing that? And he can explain you and walk you through and troubleshoot it, like Dave said. And
Yeah.
so that extra wheel turning and helping on the pool process for the customer to enjoy, a beautiful project.
Right. So again, now that brings up and it made me think of another thing. When we're starting up a pool and we're beginning to program an automation system, especially one that has a number of different components on it, what really helps me out is if the builder's electrician will give me a list of how he wired the pool. Auxiliary 1 is your pool light. Auxiliary 2 is your auxiliary jet pump. Auxiliary 3 is this water feature. And then we have valves that we need to program as feature circuits. But knowing how the pool is wired and not having to open that thing up and scratch my head and say, okay, where does this wire go? It looks like it goes to a GFI. That's probably the lights. Or just to start to randomly turning things on and off and see what happens. It's nice to have that list and a place to start when you're programming, because programming some of these automation systems is there's a lot more to it than there was in the old days. Getting all of the homeowners information, his email addresses, name and contact information. A lot of these automation systems want you to enter that right into the automation system. And then the other thing that I do is I go through every piece of equipment, take a picture of the serial number, and then go online and register it for the homeowner. Again, I need that homeowner contact information in order to do that. But when you make a warranty call, the warranty station can just pull up all that information. He's got the serial numbers, he's got everything he needs right at his fingertips. That makes his job a lot easier.
Right. And a little extra tip for everyone out there, if you're with the builder and you're pulling those lights, mark on the conduits and do a little schematic. I have pools that have excess of more than 20 lights. You do not want to start pulling one at a time to see which is the one that I need to exchange the light that went bad. So it'll save you enormous time. Everybody will be happy. All the light conduits are marked. You start clockwise or have a system so you get that also, because anybody is going to service that pool is going to have to exchange at one time or another 1 or 4 lights.
Yeah. The nicheless lights, we've gone through a lot of iterations of them, and we've had to replace a lot of those. And so, and I have been on jobs for builders where the electrician has provided a map of where the lights are and the numbered conduits, and you're right, it is so much easier. It can turn a 2-man job into a 1-man job sometimes. Not always, but sometimes.
And in one couple hours job instead of 3 days.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Another thing as part of a startup is, and you're not allowed to run the heater for 28 days or 21 days, depending on the plaster company's recommendations. They don't want the pool heated because it too can cause coloring issues in the plaster, especially dark plaster. But part of the startup should be throwing a manometer on the heater and knowing the heater's gas requirements and pressure drop requirements, and making sure that the gas supply is bled out and that the heater is ready to fire. I've gone on jobs where they've gone through the entire complete, generally a remodel, but sometimes a new construction project as well. Nobody ever thought to look at the gas meter. There's a 400,000 BTU heater and everything in the house that uses gas, and a 250,000 BTU gas meter.
Right.
So all of a sudden you start, why isn't the pool heating up fast enough? Why am I having heater problems? Why is it sitting? Nobody ever I got this far and never looked at the gas meter. So that's just something that the builder and the service technician should make sure they look at together.
Yeah.
Also, a little addition I like to add there on the equipment part. When you're going to fill up this pool and you're adding all these chemicals and you have that heater, that brought my attention because in certain pools we're now putting a plumbing bypass to the heater, so the whole circulation system is totally off from the heater voluntarily, because you don't want this much chemicals at the beginning, depending on the type of surface or depending on the type of finish you're doing for the client. You have a lot of these heaters are very sensitive. The heat exchanger can be damaged in the first week if you don't know what you're doing. So that if you want to extend the lifespan of that equipment, it's very important. Often I've seen a lot of heaters damaged because people, like Dave said, well, you should not start the heater in 30 days. Well, also salt. There's been a lot of salt generator systems that are immediately put on to work, damaging your plaster surface, but literally destroying your equipment in the first 30 days.
Mm.
And then the manufacturer comes out and says, well, what did you do that for? And manufacturers, they got to also, validate their warranty, but they also turn around and tell you, you shouldn't do this. You messed up. You were paying for the heater. We didn't do anything wrong. So that part of that integration of communication as well for the startup is important.
Yeah. Communication is really the key here. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
In all areas, not just in the pool industry.
So another area that it's kind of important to not to pay attention to it, as a service technician, and you're doing a walkthrough and you are with the builder, a lot of the times, us builders we're overwhelmed with too many things going on at the same time when you're doing a shot read, that a lot of times you oversee the height or the distance of certain pipe penetrations, and some pipes or return lines could be a little too shallow or too close to a step or to a wall. And then a lot of the issues arise after the plaster, when water and chemicals have worked through the materials for a few weeks or months, and you start seeing some deterioration, specifically where that pipe, where the water is coming out of that pipe, because it's too close to the surface area. So in that walkthrough, looking at these walls and penetrations where they are consistently on the distance and height, and not protruding into a step or getting in too close to a corner, which not only helps the plaster applicator to trial properly that area, but to avoid these kind of situations. And Dave and I have discussed that, a few times. When you have that good relationship, you can also explain to the builder, can we move that pipe up? Can we move it down? And at that prepping time, it's okay to chip out a little bit here and call the plumber and do those adjustments before the plaster crew gets there. And make sure you covered all your steel, and you use some hydraulic cement of some type or brand of preference, and apply it so you have a secure penetration and you avoided a huge problem. Because ultimately the homeowner is going to say, why is this happening here? I don't like it. You're staining this stain, take it out. and you can't do anything about it. As a service technician, says it's the builder's fault. But if you had already that communication and a walkthrough, that helps a lot, mitigate and get another problem out of the list.
That can happen with the nicheless lights too. The LED lights, if they're too low down close to the bench or whatever, they may not shine exactly the way that they should out into the pool.
And
But
it's a
knowing
really turn down for the client looking at the lights and going like, oh my God, what is this? What if it looks like a toilet bowl?
at this point, the service guy can either have the builder's back a little bit and explain especially if he's been through a walkthrough, if the builder's giving him a heads up, he can say, yeah, well, I understand that, but here's why, this or that mitigating factor happened, and the service guy can help maybe have the builder's back a little bit.
Yeah.
In the old days, when there was that kind of animosity between builders and service technicians, and then it really kind of ended up not being as good for the customer and for
Right.
his peace of mind. If
Right.
both of you have each other's backs and make the customer feel like they've hired a good crew who's on top of everything, then it's a lot better than trying to make yourself look good at either the builder or the service guy's expense. You end up with a lot better finished product and a lot better relationship with a happy customer if you work together.
I agree.
And another point about startups and the relationship between the builder and the service technician does revolve around money. In the past, when pools were really simple, or even still on pools that are extremely simple, where you just flip a switch on the time clock and start a single speed pump and everything jumps to life, maybe the startup wasn't that big of a deal. A little bit of labor, for the first couple of weeks to mitigate the plaster dust, and you were off and running. They used to have relationships between builders and service technicians where the service tech did the service for free and on the hopes that they would get the pool on service.
Yeah.
But these pools, as a service tech, I spend sometimes 2-3 entire days getting everything dialed in between the plaster startup, everything that's going on in the equipment pad. You don't just flip a switch and everything comes to life. There's multiple variable speed pumps that need to be addressed and programmed and then dialed in, the speeds set exactly where they need to be, valve positions. So the relationship that I have with builders, they make sure that I'm covered for all my time, that they actually put it into their construction contract, a fair and decent sum for my time and effort, and I really appreciate that. It makes it worth my while, and it really does get the pool off to the best start possible. But it's not expected to be done for free.
Right.
Yes, agreed. JC, thank you so much for coming on today. We're hoping to have you back as we talk to builders and startups and different things related to builders. We think it's great that you come on and help us out and give us some feedback and I guess advice and insight into the builder's world and mind. But we hope to continue this series with JC and others in regards to how service guys and builders can work together. So JC, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. And please, anybody that needs, some tips or need anything, feel free to email me or call me. I'm here to help. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dave, for the invitation. Michelle as well. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, JC.
You're welcome.
A new voice in the industry, a resource for all, education for you. This is Pool Pro Podcast. Build relationships and share important news as we get ready for our next backyard adventure. Pool Pro Podcast. Backyard adventures are better together. Please take a moment to share, like, and review our content with all of those that would be interested.